April 2020. Birmingham, West Midlands, UK. A horror room. A 28-year-old Gareeca Gordon, emotionally unstable and manipulative, murdered Phoenix nets at a Birmingham women's refuge in April 2020. After stabbing her 4 times, Gordon dismembered the body with a saw, sent fake messages to cover her crime, and transported the remains in suitcases to the Forest of Dean, attempting to burn them. What really drove Gareeca Gordon to go from personal obsession to such a calculated act of murder and cover-up? They smiled like neighbors, they blended in like anyone else, but their crimes, unthinkable. Brutality hidden behind lipstick and lies. Inside Birmingham's most notorious female killers, full list and real murder cases. Welcome to UK Real Crime, where tender love turns cold and hatred takes hold. Today we expose a chilling truth about female killers hiding in plain sight, from women who murdered out of jealousy to those who killed out of control, and in each case the warning signs were there but went unnoticed, until it was too late. Number 1. Aimee Betro. She was thousands of miles from home, a tourist in appearance, but behind the niqab she carried a gun. Aimee Betro was born in small-town Wisconsin, where her early life gave little warning of what she would later become. A good student and competitive disc golfer, she had no criminal history, no known mental health issues, and no past with violence. Her stepfather once described her simply as a good girl. After completing her studies in graphic design and early childhood education, she held a string of modest jobs and eventually landed an administrative role with the Milwaukee Brewers, one of Major League Baseball's most recognizable franchises. In 2018, Wisconsin woman Aimee Betro met Mohammed Nazir online, a connection that would lead her into an international murder plot. Nazir, living in the UK, was locked in a violent feud with Birmingham businessman Aslat Mahmoud after a brutal altercation left Nazir and his father injured. Prosecutors said revenge became an obsession. Either Mahmoud would die or his family would. By December 2018, Betro had flown to Manchester to meet Nazir. Their bond deepened, and she returned to the UK multiple times, telling friends she was visiting casually, but her real purpose was far darker. On 22 August 2019, she arrived again, buying burner phones, booking hotels under false names, and meeting Nazir in Derby to test-fire a handgun. On 7 September, disguised in a niqab and driving a car bought under a false identity, she waited outside the Mahmoud family home, a loaded gun in her hand. She pulled the trigger, but the weapon jammed. Ali reversed his SUV in panic, colliding with Betro's vehicle. She fled. Hours later, in the early hours of the next morning, she returned to the house in a taxi and fired 3 shots through the windows. The house was empty. By 9 September, she was gone, back in the United States. In the weeks that followed, Betro sent parcels from Illinois containing ammunition and gun parts to the UK, aiming to frame one of Nazir's rivals. Authorities intercepted the packages, deepening suspicions. It was a complex case, spanning continents, online romance, and a motive that prosecutors struggled to categorize. Betro claimed she didn't know Nazir planned violence. She insisted she wasn't the figure caught on CCTV. But the evidence was overwhelming. The social media posts, the travel records, the burner phones, the car, the weapon, the planning. In May 2024, Nazir and Aslam were put on trial. A month later, they were convicted. Nazir was sentenced to 32 years. Aslam got 10, but Aimee Betro was still free until Daily Mail journalists tracked her to Armenia. On 2 July 2024, Armenian police arrested her in Yerevan. She was extradited to the UK in January 2025 and brought before Birmingham Crown Court. A trial began in July. Over 3 weeks, the court heard how Betro had flown across the Atlantic, armed herself, disguised herself, and attempted to kill a man she had never met, all for someone she barely knew. The prosecution described it as a complex, well-planned conspiracy to murder and an execution. The judge agreed. On 12 August 2025, the jury returned its verdict: guilty. On 21 August, she was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She showed little emotion as the sentence was read out. Judge Simon Drew KC told the court, "You were prepared to kill a man you did not know for reasons only you and Mr. Nazir may understand. Zakanda Ali survived by chance, not because of any restraint on your part. This was a calculated attempt to end a life. Now 46, Aimee Betro is serving her sentence at HMP Newhall in West Yorkshire, far from her former life in Wisconsin and the family she left behind. She will not be eligible for parole until 2044. Her case puzzled the public. With no criminal history, how did she become involved in an international murder plot? Was it love, obsession, or manipulation? The judge concluded that infatuation was part of it, yet Betro acted with chilling independence. She wasn't paid or coerced. She chose. Police called her actions callous and brazen. A senior detective remarked, her victim was a stranger. She came here to kill a man simply because someone else wanted it done. The downfall lay in the digital trail. Messages, photos, attempts at concealment. In the end, it wasn't enough. It never is. From the story above, we have 3 memorable lessons. Online relationships can turn dangerous when emotion replaces reason. Love must never cloud morality. True affection never demands harm. And secrecy in a loved one's life can signal far darker realities. Sometimes, the greatest threat in a conspiracy isn't the planner, but the one willing to pull the trigger. Number 2. Kirsty Carless. They say Christmas is meant for peace and family, but in 2024, one English town awoke to the horror of a murder that tore those ideals apart. The perpetrator was Kirsty Carless, also known as Kirsty Cribb, a 33-year-old mother from Cannock, Staffordshire. At the time of the crime, she was living a volatile, on-off relationship with her former partner, Louis Price, a 31-year-old father of 6. Their relationship, described as dysfunctional and abusive, had begun in 2021 and was littered with police interventions. Carless had a history of violent outbursts, and Louis was even classified by authorities as being at very high risk of domestic abuse. Despite this, the cycle of confrontation and reconciliation continued until it ended in tragedy on Christmas Day. On the evening of December 24, 2024, Carless went out drinking, consuming vodka mixed with cocaine. By the early hours of Christmas morning, she received a screenshot of Price's Tinder profile. What should have been a trivial digital discovery unleashed a storm of jealousy and anger. Fueled by alcohol and drugs, Carless made a decision that revealed premeditation and intent. She returned home, retrieved a kitchen knife more than 12 inches long, and ordered a taxi to Price's address. While waiting, she called him 45 times in less than half an hour. A barrage of missed calls that prosecutors later described as a desperate and controlling act. To the taxi driver, she appeared impatient, checking repeatedly if the vehicle was near. Once inside, she asked him to wait, claiming she would only be gone a minute. At approximately 3:00 a.m., Carless entered the house in Norton Keynes, where Price was staying with his parents. Within seconds, the driver heard what he described as a loud, prolonged scream. CCTV footage captured Carless chasing Price through the garden, knife in hand. The judge later concluded she stabbed him on sight, plunging the blade through his rib and lung into his heart. Less than 2 minutes after arriving, she fled back to the taxi, sweating and agitated. She ordered the driver to her parents' home. There, she admitted to relatives what she had done. Meanwhile, Price collapsed on the conservatory floor. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at 3:46 a.m. The single stab wound had ended his life, swiftly but savagely. Police arrested Carless soon after. During questioning, she denied violent intent, even claiming she remembered nothing of the stabbing. But the weight of evidence told a different story. The premeditated retrieval of the weapon, the frantic calls, the swift attack, and the immediate escape. The case proceeded to Stafford Crown Court in July 2025. Prosecutors argued Carless was motivated by anger, jealousy, and a need to control. They labeled her manipulative, pointing out that she was already on bail for a previous assault on Price in November. The defense spoke of depression, PTSD, and prior abuse, but the jury was unconvinced. After hearing testimony, including the chilling CCTV footage and forensic evidence, they returned a unanimous verdict of guilty. On July 31, 2025, Judge Mr. Justice Chowdhury sentenced Carless to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. Addressing her directly, he said, "The intention to kill was plain. Your reaction was a jealous rage. You have shown no remorse." In the gallery, Price's family wept. His mother said, "My son was murdered by the woman he loved. My heart has been ripped apart." His father described Louis as his fishing buddy and best friend and condemned the act as pure evil. They wore shirts emblazoned with "Justice for Louis," As the sentence was delivered, the community reeled at the brutality of a murder committed on Christmas Day. The case also triggered scrutiny of domestic abuse safeguards, since Carless was on bail for assaulting the same victim just weeks earlier. Police later referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, though no misconduct was found. Still, questions lingered about whether the system truly protects high-risk victims. In the end, the story of Kirsty Carless is not only about a jealous rage turned fatal, it is a stark reflection of how obsession, addiction, and unchecked violence can converge to shatter families forever. And it leaves us asking, how many red flags must be ignored before intervention comes too late? Number 3. Gareeca Conita Gordon. It started with a text message. "There's a girl here who keeps asking me to be sexual. It scares me." Days later, Phoenix Nets would be dead, dismembered, and burned in a forest. At 28, Gareeca Conita Gordon was already carrying a lifetime of emotional wreckage. Born in Jamaica, she moved to London as a child and spent much of her youth oscillating between instability and survival. She had been in abusive relationships, had suffered exploitation, and, by her mother's own admission, was a ticking time bomb long before the murder. Diagnosed later with a personality disorder and a dangerously low tolerance for rejection, Gareeca lived much of her adult life in turmoil, emotionally volatile, intensely manipulative, and deeply isolated. In early 2020, she was living in a women's refuge in Birmingham, a place meant for safety and rehabilitation. Her room was opposite that of Phoenix Nets, a bright, kind-hearted woman of the same age, with hopes of rebuilding her life. The two developed what seemed to be a friendship, but beneath the surface, something far more disturbing was unfolding. By February 2020, Phoenix had already begun confiding in friends about Gordon's behavior. One message read, "She keeps asking me to be sexual. It's creeping me out." Phoenix was increasingly uncomfortable and planned to move back to London. On April 7, just 9 days before her death, she texted a friend, "There's a girl here who keeps asking me to be sexual. I think I'm going to move back. It's scaring me, lol." The fear was lightly veiled in humor, but it was real. On April 11, Gareeca recalled the Samaritans. She was described as tipsy and emotionally unstable, talking obsessively about her desire to have sex with another woman. That woman was Phoenix. Just 5 days later, on April 16, 2020, Phoenix Nets was stabbed 4 times in the chest in her room. Witnesses later recalled hearing cries of help me," followed by unsettling drilling and banging sounds. Gordon had searched the internet for ways to treat a punctured lung and internal bleeding but made no attempt to get help. Phoenix died in agony, alone and terrified. What followed was a chilling display of cold calculation. On April 17, Gordon bought a circular saw through Gumtree for £45 0 pence. She waited for its delivery. Once it arrived, she used it to dismember Phoenix's body into 6 parts inside their shared accommodation. Investigators described the room as looking like an abattoir. Over the following 4 weeks, she executed a web of deception and cover-up that revealed both cruelty and planning. Using Phoenix's phone, Gordon sent messages and voice notes, some digitally altered, to Phoenix's family and friends, pretending that Phoenix was alive and relocating to London. She even replied to emails, mimicking Phoenix's tone, trying to convince those closest to her that all was well, but her most harrowing task was transporting the body. She concealed Phoenix's remains in 2 large suitcases and began traveling repeatedly to the Forest of Dean, some 80 miles away. Her goal? To dispose of what she had done. She made several attempts to burn the remains in woodland near Stowfield Quarry. On May 12th, a concerned member of the public noticed a suspicious vehicle driving erratically near the area and called the police. Officers stopped the taxi. In the back seat was Gareeca Gordon with the 2 suitcases. Inside them were the partially burned remains of Phoenix Nets. As police opened the cases, Gordon reportedly said, "Sorry guys, I didn't want you to see that." She was arrested immediately. Back at the hostel, forensic teams found the dismemberment scene, the saw, and evidence of Gordon's meticulous attempts to clean and erase her crime. It was a crime of staggering brutality and cold-blooded control. Investigators later stated her actions were callous, almost inhuman. Gordon was charged with murder on May 15. The taxi driver Mahesh Suratia was also arrested for assisting an offender, though charges against him were later dropped. Throughout her initial interviews, Gordon was evasive and uncooperative. Police described her as cold and a very devious person. A psychiatric assessment confirmed that she suffered from a personality disorder, but it did not absolve her of responsibility. Her mental health may have shaped her motives, but not the outcome. In April 2021, she pleaded guilty to murder. On May 4, at Bristol Crown Court, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years and 6 months. Sitting quietly in the dock, Gordon showed no outward emotion as her fate was handed down. The judge described the crime as an act of unspeakable violence, driven by rejection and entitlement. He added, "You did not act out of sudden rage, you made a series of deliberate, grotesque decisions over weeks to cover up your crime." Phoenix Netz's family declined to give victim impact statements in court, but they later released a short message, asking the public to remember Phoenix as a kind soul, not a victim of sensational headlines. The case made national headlines and spread across UK social media, both for the horrifying nature of the crime and the rare profile of a female killer who not only murdered but dismembered her victim. Public response was marked by shock, sorrow, and anger. Many questioned how such behavior could go unnoticed in a regulated refuge setting. Others demanded a review into mental health support and oversight in women's hostels. For authorities, the case was a painful reminder of what can happen when early warning signs are ignored, and when systems meant to protect fail to intervene. In the end, Phoenix Netz never made it back to London, but her story leaves a chilling legacy about unchecked obsession, unseen violence, and how friendship can sometimes hide the deepest danger. Sometimes the person you share a hallway with isn't looking for help, they're looking for control, and when they don't get it, they destroy it. Number 4. Kathleen Salmond. A murder without a body, a benefit scam worth less than £5,000, and a vulnerable woman who vanished after being told it would be her last dinner. This is the story of Lisa Bennett. Lisa was 39 years old, struggling but still surviving. She had a history of drug and alcohol addiction, but she was in touch with her family and trying to stay afloat. After a short prison sentence, she was released into the community, vulnerable, alone, and easy to exploit. That's where she met Kathleen Salmond. The two women had met behind bars and reconnected after release. Through Salmond, Lisa was introduced to Kevin Flanagan, Salmond's boyfriend and housemate in a ground-floor flat in Wheelie Castle, Birmingham. It was a bleak environment. Drink, drugs, and dysfunction defined their lives. All three used heroin substitutes, and Lisa, who received extra benefits, became someone the couple could use. Lisa began staying at the flat. Her family didn't approve, but she assured them she was fine. In reality, she was spiraling, pawning jewelry, giving away her phone, and handing over benefit money. She was easy to manipulate, easy to discard. On or around May 9, 2013, Lisa went to her regular pharmacy in Selly Oak and picked up her daily Subutex prescription. That would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Back at the flat, Salmond and Flanagan had a plan. They had already been using Lisa's money. Now they decided to make that income permanent. That night, they murdered her. Flanagan later told his brother they gave her a last dinner, as if mocking her final moments, and then drowned her in the bath. Afterwards, they wrapped her body, stuffed it into a communal wheelie bin, and pushed it outside. It was collected by Council Waste Services a few days later, incinerated with domestic rubbish. Lisa Bennett's remains were never recovered. But the cover-up didn't stop there. 3 days after the killing, Kathleen Salmond phoned the Department for Work and Pensions posing as victim Lisa Bennett and had the £230 sterling, 0 pence a week, benefit redirected into her own account. For weeks, she and partner Kevin Flanagan collected the money. Flanagan even used Lisa's phone to send fake texts to her mother, inventing a boyfriend named Ian to explain her absence. For months, they maintained the lie. The flat was scrubbed clean, Lisa's belongings vanished, and with her body burned to ash, there was no physical trace. It wasn't until late 2013, when benefit payments were halted, that suspicions grew. The breakthrough came in 2014 when Flanagan's brother contacted police after a televised appeal, revealing Kevin had confessed to Lisa's death and the cover-up. Years of investigation followed. In 2019, Flanagan pleaded guilty to fraud and preventing lawful burial. Salmond, however, denied all charges. She appeared via video link, bedridden from partial paralysis after a failed suicide attempt, but the jury was unmoved. On December 13, 2019, Salmond was convicted of murder, fraud, and preventing lawful burial. She received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 27 years, a clear murder for gain. Lisa Bennett's mother, Jane, sat through every day of the trial. She had spent years believing her daughter might still be alive, clinging to hope because there was no grave, no closure, no remains. In court, she said, "I loved Lisa with all my heart. I was living in hope that she was still alive and well. The pain will never go away. They threw her away like trash." There was no widespread media storm, no international attention, but in Birmingham, the case struck a chord. Lisa had been vulnerable, a woman with few resources, no protection and barely a voice. That she could disappear so completely and be disposed of with such casual cruelty shook the community. Detectives described the deception as a sophisticated web of lies. Investigators pieced together fragments, phone records, benefit documents, witness statements, and that crucial family confession. But in the end, they never found Lisa, only the truth. The psychological portrait of Kathleen Salmond is complex. Raised in care, exposed to violence, addicted to drugs, and trapped in cycles of abuse, she was physically broken by 2019, dependent on carers, confined to a bed. But as the judge noted, she was still independently manipulative. She orchestrated calls to the DWP, she sent Flanagan to the bank, she plotted and profited. Her health issues may have shaped her life, but they didn't cause the murder. That came from greed. What happened to Lisa Bennett is one of the darkest reminders of how human life can be devalued when addiction, poverty, and cruelty collide. There was no grave, no ceremony, just a bin. In the end, her killers took everything from her, except her name. And sometimes, that's all justice can return. Number 5. Tracie Andrews. A single voice called the emergency services that December evening in 1996. Tracie Andrews was standing beside her fiancé, Lee Harvey, bleeding profusely on a country lane. But the story she told the police in the days that followed, about a fat man with staring eyes who attacked them, would unravel into something far darker than road rage. Tracie Marguerite Andrews was born April 9, 1969, into a fractured home. She was the middle of 3 children. Her parents separated when she was 6, leaving behind a childhood marked by volatile arguments, instability, and emotional turbulence. As she grew older, she harbored aspirations of modeling, but life dealt her hardship. Low-paid jobs, work as a barmaid, later selling goods on a market stall. Romantic relationships were stormy and tempestuous, observers later said. She displayed manipulative tendencies, emotional volatility, outbursts of anger. Some knew her as someone who would kill again. Lee Harvey was her fiancé. The relationship had been turbulent for years. Fights, accusations, violence. In October 1996, only weeks before what would happen, police were called to their home after Harvey's mother reported that Andrews had bitten him in a domestic dispute. Harvey was advised to leave. On December 1, 1996, they visited a pub, got into another argument on the way home to their flat in Alvechurch, Worcestershire, and somewhere during that trip, something snapped. Tracie Andrews stabbed him over 42 times with a penknife, wounds to his back, throat, chest, including a fatal cut through a major artery. A male resident of a nearby cottage discovered the scene, Harvey dying, Andrews standing over him, on the phone, calling for help. In the immediate aftermath, Andrews told the police and public a road rage story. A fat man with staring eyes had attacked them, she said at a press conference on December 3. She maintained that version for days. On December 4, she attempted suicide, overdosing on pills and tranquilizers, ending up in hospital. Then evidence began to contradict her. There was no sign of a car or stranger, no stray blood in her car, no witness to her story of road rage. She was arrested on December 7 at the hospital. On December 19, charged with Harvey's murder, the trial opened at Birmingham Crown Court on July 1, 1997. Andrews pleaded not guilty, sticking by her story, but the prosecution presented graphic evidence. Harvey's wounds, the 80 strands of Andrews' hair found in his hand indicating a struggle, blood patterns inconsistent with her account. The method was brutal, the scale overwhelming. She had killed in fury, but also attempted an elaborate cover-up. The jury listened as witnesses recounted the argument, the violence, before December 1, arbitration of past hurt, patterns of emotional manipulation. During cross-examination, she claimed she lost control during argument about an ex-lover. The court heard she did not summon help for 7 minutes. The evidence was damning. On July 29, 1997, Andrews was found guilty of murder. sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 14 years. She would appeal in October 1998, claiming damaging publicity had prejudiced her case, but that appeal was denied. She remained in prison until July 2011, when she was released after serving her minimum term. After release, she underwent NHS-funded cosmetic surgery on her jawline, costing £5,000 sterling, 0 pence. Public attention intensified then, changed her name to Jenna Stevens. Then Jenna Stevens Goldsworthy married a man named Phil Goldsworthy in 2017. At the moment that sentence was passed, in court, she appeared monochrome, quiet. Illness claimed some of her physical mobility. Her body had carried scars beyond what the public saw. Mixed anxiety, emotional instability, perhaps remorse, but no public declaration of regret. The judge described the murder as a tragedy for all concerned, but emphasized that Andrews' deceptions, her public performance at the press conference, her version of events, made the injury not only to Harvey, but to the public's trust. Harvey's family felt deeply betrayed. His mother Maureen and sister Michelle attended every hearing, describing themselves as deceived by Tracie Andrews' public performance. Maureen later said she would be serving a life sentence until the day I die, haunted by both her son's death and Andrews' staged appeals. Outrage grew when it was revealed Andrews had received NHS-funded cosmetic surgery while incarcerated. The family has since campaigned for exclusion zones to protect victims' relatives from contact with released offenders. Public reaction was overwhelming. The case dominated British media, with Andrews' Oscar-winning press conference replayed across newspapers and TV. The contrast between her public plea and the brutal stabbing of Lee Harvey shocked the nation. The fabricated, road rage story captured attention, sparking debates on domestic violence, deception, and the psychology of killers who manipulate appearances. Internationally, Andrews' case became a reference point in true crime, revisited in books, documentaries, and podcasts. Court evidence showed her motive was jealousy and rage, triggered by an argument about an ex-lover. Witnesses described her as volatile, manipulative, and prone to explosive anger. The frenzied stabbing revealed not self-defense, but sustained fury. Her cover-up, a staged media appeal, proved deliberate guilt. Convicted of murder, Andrews received life imprisonment with a minimum of 14 years. Later seen in declining health, she never fully acknowledged her actions. This case underscores enduring lessons. Repeated patterns of abuse should not be ignored. Deception can be part of the crime itself, and justice, even after release, cannot erase victims' families' grief. Andrews eventually walked free, but her lies and brutality remain a stark warning. Lee Harvey died, never expecting the version of tragedy his name would carry. Tracie Andrews walked free after 14 years minimum, but the echoes of her deception and the severity of her act remain. The case serves as a warning. Emotional instability should be met with support, not silence. Jealousy is not justification for violence. Truth matters because lies before, during, and after a crime deepen the harm. Some killed for money, others for love. A few simply couldn't take no for an answer. But behind every mugshot lies a deeper question: how does someone become capable of such cruelty? And, more hauntingly, could it happen again? From alleyways to courtrooms, these women rewrote what it means to be dangerous in modern Britain. And these are only a few. The UK has many more stories buried beneath silence, police reports, and time. If this case chilled you, there's more to come. Subscribe to UK Real Crime and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next deep dive into the darkest corners of British justice. Until then, stay alert, because sometimes the real threat isn't hiding in the shadows, it's hiding in plain sight.